to be really exciting for our next panel. Again, invest based on how you think about money. Invest based on how you think about money. And we have some awesome speakers with us today. Bob Jordan, welcome. Barry Spencer, welcome. I am so apologetic that we're running late, but I hope you can forgive us. This is the third day, and it's almost the end of the day. And so if we're 20 minutes late, I'm sure you'll forgive us, right?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Saving the best for last, Karim. That's what we're doing.
Almost. All right, then you got to stay till the end of this thing. So Nicole, I'm going to let you come in and make an introduction for these two wonderful professionals and gentlemen as they are. I'll get off stage. It's all about invest based on what you think about money. Here we go.
Are we waiting on someone?
All right, I think Nicole's not available. Maybe her internet's down. But then why don't we go with Bob and Barry? Barry has been a fan.
Right. Sure, we can do it. We got it.
All right.
So, hey, so Bob and I have been friends for, gosh, a number of years now. And just Bob's an awesome guy, tremendous person. And we met originally when he had produced his book, How They Did It, which we're going to bring a nugget out on this one, Bob. This was a phenomenal book. And then your most recent book, Right Leader, Right Time. And so there's some nuggets for everybody as private equity investors and investors alike that can pull from that to understand what they're investing in, which I think is really powerful for this group here today, Bob, that I think would be awesome for people to see and hear. So what people don't know through those books that you have done it. You've done what as a pioneer, entrepreneur, Inc. 500, CEO, entrepreneur, and took a business from scratch and launched it and sold it. So you're speaking from personal experience, but also working with dozens upon dozens and dozens of entrepreneurs, founders, and CEOs. So Bob, it's always good to see you, man. Always great to be on with you.
You too, Barry. Thank you. And thanks, Kareem. It's a pleasure. And we got to keep it snappy, Barry, because these people, they've been on all day, right?
I know. And late day for me too. And you was like, so Bob, How They Did It, you put 45 entrepreneurs in a room from the Midwest, not from Silicon Valley, but from the Midwest, who took their business from 0 to 300 million in public value, 100 million in private value. In other words, they launched it. They've created something like in the ballpark of $50 billion or more in real value, business value. And in the book, really awesome book, by the way, one of the best business books I've ever read. It tells their story and then gives quotes. So it's two books in one, tells their story and gives quotes in one. But who is someone in there that, as you think about people investing in private equity and they think about who do I want to invest in, who's someone that comes to mind in those stories of entrepreneurs that launched, that and I know Morningstar, Joe Mansueto, who founded Morningstar, is a good friend of yours also. But who comes to mind, and what's kind of a nugget that comes to mind for folks to talk about how this really happens? What does launch really look like?
Well, I think you hit it. I think one of the most inspiring leaders I've ever interviewed is Joe Mansueto, the founder of Morningstar, because he's the definition of the humble servant leader who, at the same point as having humility, took a business from his apartment to 5,000 employees and one of the best performing public companies of the modern era. By the way, we should also mention anyone here who has an interest in how well you brand your companies or your portfolio. If you have private companies, how well they brand. Barry used the word Midwest. It's true, I'm from Chicago, but it was interesting because we would describe the book, How They Did It, and these entrepreneurs, from there, and everyone would fall asleep. And then when we used the subtitle, we said From the Heart of America. We said $1 billion insights from the heart of America. Instantly, bookstores around the US said, oh, the heart of America. And it appeared everywhere. So branding does in fact matter. One of the other most inspiring leaders I've ever met is Dane Miller. If anybody on the line or you have a loved one who has an artificial knee or hip, you can thank one American named Dane Miller. He was the founder of Biomet. Biomet is now part of Stryker. But he started the company very modestly. He was selling off-the-shelf products to doctors, but he's a brilliant engineer, and he's the first guy in the world who figured out how to engineer parts like hips and knees out of titanium. And Barry knows, if you want, one of the greatest business stories I've ever heard. I went to go interview Dane, small town called Warsaw, Indiana, which you can't get there from anywhere. But when I met him, I said, "Show me the scar." And he has a scar on his arm, and it's where he insisted a friend of his, a doctor, implant a piece of titanium. So in the early days of thinking about medical device replacement, knees and hips, everyone around the world thought stainless steel was the best material for the human body. Dane was convinced that it would corrode and wear out, had to be titanium. Everyone thought he was crazy. He had a manufacturing plant in Indiana, and there was a point where there were tornadoes approaching north and south, and it knocked out the power to the plant, and it was going to be out for a week, and he was bored. He went to his friend, the doctor, and he said, "I'm coming over, and you got to put this piece of titanium in my arm." Doctor was like, "Oh God, Hippocratic oath." And he said, "No, you're doing it." So he did it, didn't tell anyone other than his family, and it stayed in for 10 years because he wanted to prove a point. And titanium is, of course, the standard now for knees and hips. And it was all because one guy had the force of personality and leadership that he was just going to do whatever it took to prove himself right or wrong.
So fully invested, all the people in there, Bob, that you talked about, all 45 are fully invested personally. They're all in on the mission. They're all in personally to the mission, and they're going to do something to make sure that people know that they're all in on that. And I think that's a huge important piece when you look at whose business are you invested in. As Link2 gives us the opportunity to invest in private equity firms that aren't public yet, who that founder is a great place to go research, and how much are they in on it? How much are they invested? What's their mentality behind it, and so forth. And one of the things that we've talked about a lot as well is around this idea of this 10-year overnight success, right? And I don't know if you want to talk about that, Bob, but this is a brilliant concept that everyone really needs to understand, that every business that makes it's a 10-year overnight success, right?
Yeah, we sought to study all of these incredibly successful founders and companies. As you said, the low bar was 100 million sale. Founder had to stay from launch to point of 100 million sale or 300 million IPO. And so I thought we were going to get lessons from, people who had never failed. And it was the exact opposite, which is to say, everyone failed. Everyone had to pivot. Plan A never worked. And if that sounds like, oh, this is just trite or whatever, some of the examples were crazy. I mean, one of the earliest IPOs for MRI technology came out of academic research, the University of Wisconsin. And so they had a team and they were ready to launch. They had the biggest industrial company in the world at the time. I won't say their name, but they were partnering, ready to launch. And on launch day, the partner backed out. Now, at the point when we were talking to them, it was $1 billion valuation public company. It was kind of like, what happened? How did you go from having to lay everyone off on day one to a successful IPO? And that story repeated itself time after time.
So I work with a lot of accredited investors that are everyday millionaires, right? They are accredited, they can invest in private equity. Most don't. Most have no idea anything about it. So private equity is a whole new brand of investing for folks. And then how to kind of think about that. And most should not invest in it because they just can't understand it. And it's more speculation, which goes down the road of, when you invest in it, some businesses are gonna launch sooner, some are gonna launch later, but overall, all of them need more time than most people want to give it. Right? Whether it's 10 years or 20 years or 30 years, it just needs more time than most are willing to put in. to the timeline of investing. And because of these things, right, they're going to try something that's going to fail, then they're going to relaunch. And that's why the commitment to the of the founder to the overall mission and outcome is so important, because everything, I always say, everything hinges on and rises and falls on leadership, right? And if you don't have that, so as an investor,
to that point, Barry, sorry for interrupting you,
Yeah.
but talk a little about that client mentality. What is described mentality when it comes to investing?
Yeah, I think one of the pieces about that, I think so many get too short-term minded, right? They think, where's my payoff, my payoff, my payoff? And so now we go through a year like we're in right now, and they think, oh, all that was supposed to pay off this year. Well, was your mentality a year? Was it 3 years? Was it 5 years? There's so many things, including geopolitical events, that can get in the way of the investment time horizon extending out and lengthening. And so people really got to have a mentality of long term. And I think one of the worst mentalities that people can really have is the get rich quick. I think it is one of the worst mentalities that face investors, that really the mainstream media, friends, neighbors, all that kind of stir up for people. And it makes people short term, give up too quick, get frustrated, get worried, get concerned, and don't have an overall good feeling and mentality and emotional relationship to their investments. And so they need to remove the whole get rich quick. When it happens, it happens. Invest in great leadership and great companies for the long term. So hugely important to do that. And I'll get to one more thing in a second about that. So Bob, let's transition and let's talk about the leader. You recently launched this book here, Right Leader, Right Time. You talk about 4 different styles of leadership. And I think it's a great time. You said to me about your friend Joe Mansueto, the guy you knew when he started the company is not the same guy who runs the company today. So I think you bring that out here in this book. So why don't you touch on what that really looks like and why that's so profoundly important for people to understand, because maybe people invest in the founder and then they see the founder maybe a little bit different, or the founder leaves and they bring in a CEO, and why that should or shouldn't be an issue as an investor in these kind of private equity investments.
Yeah, it's a great question, Barry. So what you're referring to, these 4 styles, in our work, because we had seen 7,000 leaders show up on our doorstep, if you will, we saw 2 distinct patterns. One was bad, one was good. The bad one is that the vast majority of leaders are experiencing career journeys that you could describe as pretty good or okay, but not remarkable. Not people really that you should back with your money. The top 1, 2, maybe 3% exceptional, remarkable leaders. And among those exceptional leaders, we saw 4 distinct leadership styles that we labeled fixer, artist, builder, and strategist, FABS. And so that's the core of why we started researching to go write the book, Right Leader, Right Time. There's also a free assessment tool. It's called FABS Leadership Assessment that's about to launch, and it's free. Any of you can take it. Actually, I want to challenge Gavin or Kareem, if your staff, I see surveys going up here. So I'm happy to describe these 4 styles, and I would love it if you put up a question and ask everybody on the call whether you think you are more wired as fixer, artist, builder, or strategist. Are y'all up for the challenge?
We are going to work on that right now.
Okay, here we go. So fixer. Fixer is the energy of the leader who loves to run into the burning building time after time. Now, all leaders are called upon for a variety of styles, capabilities that you have to bring to bear. We get that. Fixer energy, if it is dominant, though, is the kind of leadership style they have to keep doing it over and over again for fulfillment. One of the leaders we interviewed and how they did it, he said, middle of an interview, kind of apropos of nothing, he said, you know, if I put a fixer into one of my companies and it's not broken, he'll break it just so he can fix it. And that stuck with us when we were thinking about the model for Right Leader, Right Time. Artist. Artist leader is the energy that views the world as a blank canvas or a piece of clay. The standout leader in the world right now that everyone knows, artist leader, is Elon Musk. When I say artist leader for Elon, though, I'm referring to SpaceX, Tesla, and the Boring Company, because almost single-handedly, Elon has reinvented or had the world rethink electric vehicles and that space travel could be privatized. He's also a cautionary example at the moment, because as we're all on this call right now, Elon is in week number 6 of owning Twitter, and it is absolutely not the playbook that any true fixer leader would use, and it kind of points to his energy being primarily artist. The third leadership style is builder. Now, I know everybody in business, everybody's a builder, got it. We mean a definition of builder, which is the ability to take a nascent product, service, team, client relationship to market domination or scale. The mantra for builder is market, and that's it. And for a lot of veteran builders, what you will see if they are successful is when they get to scale, for example, IPO, the best thing for that leader is they're going to go back and want to do it all over again. The final leadership style is strategist. We could have equally called it conductor, pilot, quarterback. This is the leader at scale. The predominant example in the world, for example, now I would say is Fred Smith, who just retired from Federal Express. He's one of the only leaders who kind of went through the bases from artist, fixer, builder, to the point of running an organization, FedEx, at massive complexity and size. But this is the leader. Thank you. We now have a poll up here. I'm going to ask everybody, take it. Which one do you think you are? Anyway, strategist, just to wrap up there, the language between these 4 styles is radically different. Strategist leaders talk about loyalty, being mentored, mentoring other people, even if they're not with the company, cross-training, longevity. You're not going to hear fixers, artists, and builders talk that way. Fixers, artists, and builders tend to be leading teams, divisions, companies that are 5 people, 10 people, 50, maybe 200, but within their personal span of control. That phrase Stephen Covey had. Not true for strategists.
Cool. So today, we have any results yet on people took that? What they think?
You're a little bit anxious, but it's okay.
Yeah.
But while we're waiting for that, I'd like to say to everybody, whoever wants Bob Jordan's new book, let us know in the chat section, right leader, right time. Send in your email on the chat section, and link to will buy the book and send that to you. So we need your email, then we'll respond to you, says give us your address, and then we'll send you that book. There you go. So continue with the conversation while we wait for this.
So Bob, I really think that's really awesome. Right leader, right time, and going through that survey. Look forward to the questionnaire that you have coming out, the assessment that you have coming out. That should launch next year, I think, is what you had. I took a mini assessment from the book. Really, really powerful to kind of see who you are in the moment, and super, super cool about that. And I was thinking about this with people. I think there's a mentality about, and you asked me this a second ago, and I'm sitting here as I'm thinking about people listening to us talk about this. And it really comes down to, the broad mainstream media, kind of the traditional money manager guy or gal, buys a bunch of mutual funds for people. And so they own, without realizing it, thousands of companies inside of their 401k or inside of their investment account, all that kind of stuff. They don't realize it, but they own thousands of companies potentially. And then maybe they get exposed to a private equity, which is what I've seen with some people of late. And then they buy one company. And it's just really interesting to me because on the one side of the pendulum, they're way over allocated. So that when something really hits, it really doesn't have any impact because they own 0.1% in their portfolio of a company. And so it just doesn't matter at all. And then on the other side, go to the private equity side, they got everything weighing on one company. And the problem is the answer is in the middle, right? You should own great high quality companies that are around for a long time. And then on the private equity space, you really got to allocate because you don't know when those are going to hit. So I always say, if you can own 10 of these private companies like led by these leaders that you're talking about, Bob, then I have a good chance if I can own 10 or 12 or 15 of these companies, maybe one hits. And let's just say, I have $100,000 and I can put it in 10,000 each company, because Link2 allows, the ability for even the smallest accredited investor to be able to do that. Well, one of them hits, and let's just say it's a single and the 10 becomes 20,000, right? You take the 10,000 and put it in your pocket. You take the other 10,000, go put it in another private equity deal. And then it does it again and put 10 in your pocket. This time you got 20 and you put 20 into another deal. And as you do that, it really becomes a powerful snowball effect in that. And finding companies like we're talking about, these kind of leaders that you're talking about, I think is really powerful. And what Link2 gives us the opportunity to do for folks on here, to be able to invest 10,000, 25,000, 50,000 into multiple deals. And one of the biggest mistakes I see is all the way at one end, people are over allocated to way too many companies. They have no idea what they own. And on the other end over here, they're allocated to so few companies that if one doesn't work, they're going to be totally destroyed. And the answer is getting the allocation right in between, so that when you win, you can win really well, but you can also do it with great peace of mind and sleep at night rest, knowing what you're invested in, and you can make things work. And doing that makes sense, right? And so most people just don't realize it, don't think about it,
Yeah, no, you're 100% right about that. And I can think of stories I read in the paper every day that they're tragic, of folks where there is no allocation, and it's easy to be armchair quarterback, but there's tragedies out there with those stories.
And then people also, I would say, they also last thing I'm going to say, Karim, then we can wrap up, because I would say the last thing about it is if one of the deals doesn't hit, I say, well, so what? That means it's just like a guy batting. Just think about your private equity investments and your other company investments this way. It's just like your batting percentage. My son's a big baseball player. 3 out of 10, you're making tons of money in the major leagues, right? Well, what happens if the first 5 out of 10 are strikeouts? Oh, well, that's the way it runs, right? But what's going to happen with the next 5 or the next 20 at bats or whatever the case is? And you got to think about investing in the same way. And you got to think about going about it in a similar sort of fashion, and you'll be successful when you do it that way. So, hey, Bob, this is great, man. I love being on with you. Awesome insights, great books. Thanks, Karim, for offering the book for folks on here. It's a great book, great read. Love everything Bob does.
So
thank you, Barry, and thank you, Karim.
So, guys, first of all, Barry and Bob, I know you were very accommodating and tried to catch us up on time. It's been, we've got other panelists waiting, and I appreciate that. But I want to say to the audience here, obviously before having this panel, Barry and Bob, we spent time on the phone, and what we've touched is barely the surface. So what I'd like to be able to do is, Bob, with your permission, and I want a response from the audience right now. If we get more than one, actually no, if we get more than one who says we'd like Bob on a Link to Learn, and Link to Learn, the tagline for GIC and Link to Learn is engage, educate, and empower people so we can make the right decisions. We'd like you back on a Link to Learn in the early parts of 2023.
Oh, I'm honored. Thank you.
So all of you attendees say, yes, we want Bob and Barry back, and then we'll get them back so that they can have full value of the time that they gave us back today. But I want to just go back to a little bit to what Tim and Jan was saying while they were doing their panel, and noticing the characteristics of the people that they invest in and how those companies, look, it's unheard of that in the angel investment environment that more than 2% of the companies succeed. And he's batting 50%, 50 to 55%, which means the character of the person, the executive team, and how they execute on building those companies makes a difference to success. And that's why we brought on Link2 back in the middle of the day to say, hey, let's look at the leadership. Let's understand who they are. Let's understand what they do and how they operate. And again, when we were speaking with Tim, it's not, you don't make these decisions in a 5-minute conversation, right? It is a look down deep into it, having had the experience like Barry has in these financial marketplaces, because you've suddenly got an innate ability to look at and see what's going on. And Bob, with what you've done with coaching executives to take their companies to the next level is an important benchmark for us to start to realize. As we start to make investments and realize what we want to do, we have to do our due diligence. We have to do our research. And these are the things to take care of. We talked about identity. We talked about all of these things in the past. And the ability that we have now to do some search and in-depth research for the companies and the people that we want to invest in. And these are important. And we'd like for you to pick this up a little bit more with us at a Link to Learn, and we'd appreciate that. And we got a bunch of yeses that I'd like to see.
Hey, Karim, let me just finish with one thing on what you're saying. Is one of the things that most people don't have the savviness or the background of what to research and where to research companies. There's people that have already done that work for them, number one. And I think that's one of the benefits of Link2 is that on the platform, all the research is right there. It's right there, evaluation, everything. You don't have to go search anywhere, you don't have to dig anything. Unlike the olden days when Bob started out, I mean, you had to go to the library and dig all kinds of microfilm or something like that, you know? So again,
in
sorry.
the wagon with the horse and go.
I'm sorry, Bob. Yeah. Anyway, it's right there and it's available for people to do. But anyway, this has been great fun. Thanks, Karim, for having us on. Bob, good to be with you.
Thank you.